The government is under fire for supposedly not doing enough to protect the country's sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea, but the Foreign Affairs chief says they've got things under control. Speaking in a one-on-one interview with CNN Philippines' Pinky Webb, Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano addresses his critics and explains exactly what his agency is doing about China.
Foreign Affairs Chief Alan Peter Cayetano says the country will not demand an apology from China as Chinese Coast Guard personnel took the catch of Filipino fishermen in Scarborough Shoal.
Are we going to demand an apology? Yes or no, sir?
I don't think so. I think they've apologized. I mean, in their investigation, then they will apologize.
In an exclusive interview on The Source, Cayetano also finds unacceptable China's statement that allowing Filipino fishermen in Scarborough is an act of goodwill.
Hindi natin
Please react to
yun.
that, sir.
No, we don't accept that.
You don't accept that when the Chinese ambassador says this is a good gesture?
And they know that we don't.
Cayetano says there's been a verbal tentative fishing agreement between China and the Philippines on Scarborough. Under the deal, Cayetano says fishermen can freely fish in Scarborough Shoal except in the lagoon, which is a fish spawning area. The secretary also refuses to call the incident a harassment from the Chinese Coast Guard.
So how do we characterize? We characterize that we're diplomats eh. So of course, we will get the reports and factual yan. So kung ang gamitin ng word the fisherman eh, harassment, ninakawan, etc. Kami, we characterize it as incidents. Then we investigate.
He also denies claims of Magdalo Representative Gary Alejano that the country had stopped patrols in the West Philippine Sea. Cayetano adds the country is still in control of Sandy Cay, which is a stone's throw away from the Philippine-occupied Pag-asa Island.
Who has control over Sandy Cay right now? Because that's 1 or 2 nautical miles, I believe, from Pag-asa.
Tayo. There's no one built on Sandy Cay. It's an uninhabited and katabi siya ng Pag-asa, so we're free to patrol there. Our fishermen can go.
But is China the only one building structures in disputed waters? Cayetano reveals even Vietnam and Malaysia have structures in the area with defense capability.
The truth is only the Philippines and Brunei is for complete demilitarization of the area.
Cayetano says he has filed a number of protests against China, but he did not reveal the exact number. He also clarified on who gave the go signal for a Chinese military aircraft to land in Davao.
Normal ito. It's may proseso, meron tayong permits.
When asked about his political plans, Cayetano says he just wants to be successful leading the Foreign Affairs Department for now. Pinky Webb, CNN Philippines.
Netizens are weighing in on Secretary Cayetano's statements. Facebook user Jar Not Bink says the bottom line is that Cayetano does not want to compromise ongoing negotiations. Glenn Iglupa says the country's situation with China is unfair. He adds, quote, but what can we do against a powerhouse nation, unquote. Iglupa says it's best to be friendly with them and use a diplomatic approach in the South China Sea dispute. Meantime, this Facebook user says, quote, compare what the government is doing with what Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, and others are doing. They never went to war fighting for their territories, unquote. And finally, Omar Agustin says, history will judge us if we did it right in the West Philippine Sea. Police arrest one of the suspects in the killing of Nueva Ecija priest, Father Richmond Nilo. The suspect, identified as Adel Milan, was apprehended last night, 4 days after the murder. Police say Milan is a drug surrenderee and is a known hitman in the province. A witness positively identified Milan as the one who shot Nilo. Police add Milan is just one of the 6 suspects linked to the murder. The priest was shot Sunday, a few minutes before he was about to celebrate the 6 p.m. Mass at the Nuestra Senora de la Nieve Chapel in Barangay Mayamot in Zaragoza town. While authorities have yet to establish a motive for his killing, Nilo was laid to rest today. Mourners wore black as they called for justice for the slain priest. Nilo was the 3rd priest killed in 6 months. The Cabanatuan Diocese had condemned the killing and calling the government to investigate the cases of slain priests. Despite his constant tirades against the priesthood, President Rodrigo Duterte denies he had been persecuting them. Another stumbling block on the road to peace with communists, the government backing out of the scheduled resumption of formal talks with the Communist Party of the Philippines. Our Cecil Lardizabal tells us how consultants of the CPP and the National Democratic Front are reacting.
Communist negotiating panel consultant Ray Casambre is scheduled to leave Friday for the Netherlands for the June 28 resumption of peace talks with the government. But he canceled his flight after the government announced that formal talks won't resume as scheduled until an enabling environment is reached.
Malinaw when they say enabling environment, and they have said so explicitly several times. What they mean is a ceasefire.
Leaders and consultants of the Communist Party of the Philippines and National Democratic Front are disappointed at what they call a unilateral decision to suspend the talks. Casambre says the NDF was prepared for a stand-down or a lower form of a ceasefire, which was supposed to lead to a coordinated unilateral ceasefire under the deal to be signed when formal talks resume.
What are they talking about? That there's no enabling environment. That was what the agreement is supposed to produce. That is hardly a reason now kasi as early as November, the NDF and the government had agreed on a stand-down. A stand-down of forces is actually a ceasefire. Medyo low form lang yan.
Casambre believes the government is not yet ready for the social and economic reforms stated in the provisions of the agreement. These include fiscal policies and the tax reform law, free land distribution, and rights of the working people. CPP founder Jose Maria Sison in a statement says the Duterte administration is obviously not interested in serious peace negotiations and that the revolutionary forces and the people have no choice but to single-mindedly wage people's war to achieve liberation. Casambre tells CNN Philippines Sison is willing to come back to a visit within the year, but the cancellation of talks negates this possibility. So what's next for the Communist panel?
They are waiting for the government team that is due to arrive in the Netherlands on Sunday to give an explanation, a more elaborate explanation of why the decision was made.
In the meantime, the peace talks hang in the balance.
Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano admits there was a glitch in the DFA's website after they announced they opened 100,000 new passport appointment slots. Despite this, Cayetano commits they will regularly open 10,000 additional slots from Monday to Saturday at 12 noon and 9 p.m. That's on top of over 300,000 appointments already booked from June to September this year.
Bottom line, there are much more applying for passports daily than the capability of DFA at napabayaan to in the past. When I became secretary, we were doing 10,500 a day. We're now doing 19,000 a day. So yesterday we opened 50,000 in the 12 noon and 50,000 at night. Something happened that the system crashed for a while.
It did, sir.
6 a.m., 5:30 a.m., I checked it again. It was, Asiana was open the whole July. Every day we will open 5,000 more slots at lunch and at dinner. And with e-payment, we're expecting 95 to 100% na pupunta.
But netizens are raising their eyebrows, many saying it's difficult to book an appointment. This one claims the DFA system is a joke. He says the Filipino people have been waiting for months like beggars. He goes on to say that the process is like going to war. Twitter user Ryan says she waited for 1 hour only to be informed that there were no more available slots. And this one on Facebook says it's simply impossible that the DFA is fully booked until September. She says, quote, "We deserve better service." Another error from the Presidential Communications Operations Office draws flack after one of its Facebook posts called Norway by a different name. On its Facebook page, the PCOO reports President Duterte conferred the Order of Sikatuna to outgoing Norwegian Ambassador Erik Forner. But netizens were quick to point out that the post described Forner as, quote, "the representative of Norwegia and not Norway." The post has since been corrected. On Twitter, a parody account at Malacanang Events shared this photograph promoting a trip to Norwegia. Maria Ancheta, meanwhile, says Norwegia is probably beside the Kingdom of Genovia, a fictional nation from the Disney movie Princess Diaries. Andy Luterio, however, says it's behind the Kingdom of Wakanda, also a fictional country, this time in the Marvel Universe. But Anton Marcelino called out netizens poking fun at the error. He says rather than finding mistakes made by the administration, it would be better to suggest or offer constructive criticism. After all, he points out, we all make mistakes. Moving on to another story, the country joins more than 1 billion Muslims around the world in observing Eid al-Fitr, or the end of Ramadan. What did Muslim Filipinos pray for on this special day? Rex Remigio has that story.
By daybreak, the Muslim holy month of Ramadan ends, as well as the fast during daytime. Muslims prayed kneeling on their rugs in a number of places like this one at the Blue Mosque in Taguig's Maharlika village Friday morning. This day marks the Eid al-Fitr, or festival of breaking the fast. Most Muslims prayed for good health and better career, but 36-year-old Jeremy Ibrahim also prayed for his wife, who is a household helper in Qatar. Ibrahim is worried about the abuses some Filipino workers are facing in the Middle East. Others even face death, just like what happened to household worker Joanna Demafilis in Kuwait.
Kung hanggat maaari sana talaga gusto ko, dito siya. Pero, yun nga, sa hirap din ng buhay. Kaya kailangan magsakripisyo.
After more than an hour of prayer, it's time to go to their families and friends to share meals, gifts, and laughter. Some devotees shake hands, hug, and kiss each other in the cheek as a sign of peace and goodwill. Others take the opportunity to take selfies and family photos like the clan of 29-year-old Laila Ahmad. They wear their best long dresses in different colors on Eid al-Fitr.
Tuwing Eid al-Fitr po, kailangan yung may kakayahan po bumili ng mga bagong damit. Ayun po, mahalaga po yun.
But unlike Ibrahim's wife, Ahmad is contented working as a nurse in the country. She's hoping her family's bond would stay strong. But more than the personal wishes, they're hoping for long-lasting peace, especially in Mindanao. Some Muslim community groups are calling for the passage of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. This is also the first Eid al-Fitr since the Marawi crisis ended in October 2017. That's why they're also urging those who commit violence in the name of Islam to go back to Allah.
Napakasakit na tinatawag minsan ng mga terrorist, yung mga gumagawa minsan ng labag sa batas, labag sa Islam ng mga Muslim. Actually, kapag Muslim, hindi gumagawa na anumang ikakasama at ikakapinsala ng kanyang kapwa.
They also wish fellow Muslims will continue to practice the teachings of Islam, especially discipline and patience beyond the Ramadan. To all Muslims, shukran and Eid al-Fitr al-Mubarak.
We're still closely watching a tropical depression north of the country. The good news, it's on its way out. Tropical depression Esther was last recorded 295 kilometers north of Basco, Batanes. It's barely moving, but Pagasa says it will exit the country tonight or tomorrow morning. Bad news, we're still up for a few more rainy days. Flood and landslide alerts are up in Ilocos, the Cordilleras, Batanes, Babuyan group of islands, Tarlac, Bataan, and Zambales. These areas can expect heavy downpours because of the southwest monsoon or habagat. Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Mindoro, and the rest of Cagayan Valley and Central Luzon will get light to moderate rains also because of the habagat. Meantime, the rest of southern Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao are free of the effects of the monsoon, but these areas can still expect overcast conditions with some rain showers. Urban Poor Group has yet to succeed in looking for permanent homes for its members. The Kalipunan ng Damayang Mahihirap, more commonly known as Kadamay, has long had its eyes set on unoccupied housing units meant for policemen and soldiers. But the government is not budging. George Cahiles reports.
Dozens of anti-riot police are manning La Solidaridad village in Rodriguez, Rizal, east of Metro Manila. They are making sure members of Urban Poor Group Kadamay will not enter the subdivision again. President Duterte on Thursday ordered the police to stop Kadamay from occupying houses in this government housing project dedicated for men in uniform.
Kung gusto ninyo ng away, sabihin ko sa polis, bigyan mo ng away. Kung magkamatayan, huwag kayong mauna. Pero kung kailangan pumatay kayo para i-implement ang legal na regulasyon, gawain ninyo.
The Calabarzon Police Chief himself in Special Action Force uniform is at the site to make sure the police deployment is in place.
Inutusan ko siya na magpadala ng tropa rito. Kahit na wala na rito yung grupo ng Kadamay, ang kinakatakot natin na ina-avoid natin ay yung kanilang blitzkrieg tactics na bigla silang dudumog dito na pagkarami-rami, walang magawa ang mga residente rito. But
On Wednesday, Kadamay members stormed the area searching for unoccupied housing units. But the group also left the subdivision in the afternoon and staged a protest at the National Housing Authority. Among them, 63-year-old Emmy Trinidad, who lives in the shanty on top of a garbage dump in Barangay San Isidro. She removes the label and cap of plastic bottles in this junk shop. Every day, she earns around 150 pesos.
Paano kami matatanda na? Hindi namin makakayanan. Pagdating ng panahon, magkasakit kami. Sinisigurado namin na mayroon kami matutulugan na hindi malamig ang aming tulugan. Ayan yung sinutulugan namin lupa, yan.
4 years ago, she applied as a beneficiary of the government housing project. But to this day, no clear answer as to when she'll receive a unit.
Ang sabi, inaayos daw ang papel. Hanggang ngayon, pagparaayusin na lang yung papel. Wala namang katotohanan. Kaya, eto kami, nag-aantay hanggang ngayon. Ang gusto namin, maging madali ang portiso na ibigay kaagad yung pabahay na yun. Ang dami dyan nga nakatiwangwang, pinapaupahan nila. Hindi man lang nila, hindi sila maawa sa amin na wala kaming tinitiran.
The NHA Calabarzon director says dozens of units in La Solidaridad subdivision remain unoccupied. But she adds the units have been awarded to police and soldiers.
Nagtaging dito na talagang pag hindi nag-occupy, ni-re-award sa ibang interested parties na nakatira. Priority yung mga nakatira dito na AFP, PNP.
Meantime, the NHA cannot say as to when it will be able to provide housing units for the likes of Trinidad who are seeking shelter in their senior years.